Alright, so what we're going to be doing today is working on a crank removal. We're going to start with a basic set of tools, type you get in a kit kind of like this one here. This is a very basic kit I got from Performance Bike, but same type of kit you get on like Amazon. Some basic tools, good for wrenching at home. Tools that I'm going to be using today are going to be flathead screwdriver, the pedal wrench with the 15 and 14 mil socket on it, as well as the crank puller tool, little two-piece set. Because we're going to be working on a square tapered, we're going to have to remove the little round piece. It will not fit in through the square tapered holes. We'll get to that in a moment. So first things first, we're going to remove the dust caps. Should be fairly easy to remove. These are plastic. Not all will have them. Mine does. So we're going to remove them from both sides. I've already removed the pedals to make this a little bit easier because we're going to be swapping cranks out. And I'm also not going to be using the same pedals. Reach over here, grab my 14 millimeter wrench. Some will be 15. This one is 14. Standard threads on these, so left to loosen. Get the drive side off real quick here. Make sure you put these parts somewhere that you're not going to lose them. And get the non-drive side. Once they're fairly loose, you should be able to pull them off with your hands. Alright. Now the fun part. This is the part where we're going to need, like I said, the crank puller tool. Let's thread it down a bit. Like I said, for this one we're going to have to remove this little piece. Should just kind of a little bit of force, wiggle it off. So you want to kind of thread it in fairly close to the top. On your crank arms is a set of threads. And on these threads is where you're going to sit the threads for the puller tool. Inside of that is where the bottom bracket mounts, and that's what the top piece of the puller is going to be used for. So we're threading on now. Get it nice and snug. If it's not threaded in all the way, back the second bolt off a bit more until it's nice and snug, and then we'll go ahead and thread that in. Now that we got that threaded in, we'll take our pedal wrench again. It's going to be a 15 mil on this one. And we're just going to tighten it down. If it starts getting tighter, I start trying to pull it closer to the crank arm. Just a little bit of force, and just keep twisting it around. Now that we've mostly gotten it free, just twist it off. And of course, I am not going to be able to finish this today because the crank set that I have is square tapered and not the ISIS. So we're going to just pull this all apart anyway. The same procedure will kind of go in reverse, except we'll no longer need the crank puller tool once we get the cranks back on, which I'll show you how to do. And there we go. Thread it off. Cranks are off. Alright, go ahead and remove the tool. So we're going to do the same process in reverse. I'm just going to show you on the drive side arm, since I will have to pull the bottom bracket to put the new cranks on that I'm putting on. Make sure that you get your chain back on before you line it up. Then once it'll sit on the threads, give it a couple taps. Grab one of those bolts that we pulled out. Go ahead and thread that back in. Again with our 14mm socket here. And just tighten it back up. Once it starts to get tight, you're going to want to snug it down. These do have a specific torque. A lot of times it's either going to be listed for the cranks themselves or the bottom bracket. I do not have a torque wrench, and a lot of you may not. So the important thing is, I want to make sure you get it good and snug to the point where you're going to have a hard time getting it to tighten anymore. Biggest thing is you want to try to make sure, let's see if I can get this in here, that the crank arm sits nice and flush with the bottom bracket. Once you've done that, go ahead and put your pedals back on. Well, put your other crank arm on, put your pedals back on. Should be good to go. Dust caps can go back on. They're mostly there to look nice, keep those threads a little bit cleaner. I put them on. I like them. You don't have to. Anyway, thanks for watching my first repair video, and thanks for pedaling with me.